All right. So, okay, let's see if this works. Okay, so this is what's on our agenda. Okay. No, I can't read that small. I am old. All right. So, yeah, could you make it still bigger? She's kept it really small because I have a lot of notes. Okay. Okay, so since we've been doing this for the last 3 years, all right, there are 2 New Year messages that are there from the last year and the previous year, where I have been doing this. So there are statistics which I don't want to keep repeating because, especially in 2020, I said some things from a perspective of the whole decade, right? Because we entered a new decade in 2020. And so those things I'm not really referring to this time because I've already given it to you twice. So you might as well go back and hear the previous messages if you want to really look at the whole decade and understand what we have said from that perspective. I'm just summarizing it this time so that we can have a quick look at that. Then we want to talk about the trends of the world generally that we see around us, trends in India in particular. How does this matter from the biblical prophetic context? And what are the trends in the church? What's going on? And what are the trends in the mission field? And finally, I'm asking, what does it mean to us? Where do we go from here? Quo vadis, which is a Latin word for where do we go? Right? And so that's what we're going to do today. Right? Okay, so this was the 2020s, the decade ahead, and we talked about the trends of 20s for the whole decade. But I'm summarizing it here. You probably should go back and listen to the previous messages to get it in full. All right. So one of the big changes we've seen in our lives for those who are close to 40 would be that, we've seen our world change from the way technology has changed it, from how computers have come in to how the internet has become so pervasive across the society. All right. Mobility, the whole aspect of how the world has become smaller. We can travel from any part of the world to any part of the world, more or less in an affordable manner today than you could probably maybe about 50, 100 years back. Social media, and we're talking about how this has become a very important aspect of at least young people's lives. I don't know about the older people, how much they're bothered about it, but yeah, it's there for everybody nowadays in some sense. Virtual reality, a technology that seems to be upcoming and so far not disruptive. But as we have always seen from everything before, technology grows to a certain point and suddenly becomes disruptive. All right. Internet also was not disruptive when it started. At a certain point, it suddenly disrupted all of our lives. Virtual reality is another one of those things that's coming. And probably the curve of when it will disrupt all of our lives is still ahead. Okay. Where did everything go? Okay, there it is. Okay. AI, we've been talking about this, and artificial intelligence is still not disruptive to the extent that we are thinking, but who knows where it's going to go, right? Just to say one thing about this, I don't know how much you guys have been following what is happening with autonomous cars that drive by itself. There was at least 2 serious accidents in the last year where autonomous cars went and crashed into each other and killed someone for the first time. All right. For the first time, we have an accident where somebody has died because of it. Till now, that hadn't happened, but that has happened. Okay. And of course, there's been a reaction and a lot of other things have happened. And this happened in California, if I'm not mistaken. Right. And so the point is, these are things which are coming, and AI has started to play a part in some way as autonomous cars and things like that. Of course, we in India are confident that autonomous cars will never come here, because if that was even remotely possible, I mean, that would be the day, right? But normal cars itself are difficult, right? But the point I'm making is, see, this is happening around you. The world around you is changing, right? Now, this is an important aspect we talked about, and of course, you guys will not be sure unless you have listened to the previous message. So, the alter or metaverse, the idea of what is called as the auto soul vision, is something that is still not visible, because the idea is where we think the world is going to come to a place where they're going to manipulate or use your soul in a way that is occultic. Okay. And these kind of functions are going to come. And this is going to come increasingly when we come to these kind of AI things and many other things. And then it will proceed from one step to the next. And at some point, they're going to start talking about enabling you in such a way that you will be just a couch potato. Your body is not doing anything, and they're going to use your soul in some way. And why is this something we see? Because in the end times, in Revelation, there is a prophecy about trading in souls. People are going to buy and sell souls. How is that possible? We have no idea. But this is something that we're going to see eventually come to. So here is that idea. Cryptocurrency, something that you guys are, of course, quite familiar with. But what we said was, I think we said that in last year's thing and even in the previous year, that cryptocurrency will become regulated, something nobody would accept when I said this. But last year, it has happened. This 2022, it has started happening. The Indian government has said they are going to produce cryptocurrency. The government regulated cryptocurrency is coming. Now, why did we say this? We said this because we understood biblical prophecy. What does prophecy say? That one day all the currency will be manipulated together as one world economy. But for a world economy in cryptocurrency, which is not regulated, that will be very difficult. So we can understand the trend. Why? Because we understand prophecy. Therefore, we are saying that cryptocurrency will be regulated. And that happened last year. Indian government, for the first time, and I think very few governments have done it, but the Indian government did it. All right. And they have come out with the digital rupee. And it's still not taken common marketplace relevance, but you can see one foundation, one step at a time, things start progressing. Sorry. Okay, so this has made progress and we are starting to see something in this direction. And of course, the other problem that happened last year was cryptocurrency collapsed 2 times. There was at least 2 occasions when the market dipped so badly that everybody, thought that cryptocurrency was finished, the unregulated version. All right. The other thing we said was medical governance by co-governmental agencies, which are mandating what goes into the human body. We called it the Nephilim project. See, the idea is that we're going to come to a place where we're going to see the similar experience at what happened during Noah's time, where the Nephilim kind of work is going to happen through medical projects manipulating DNA. All right. And so that's going to come again. Where is it coming right now? Right now, it's coming in child care. It's coming in projects which are like, when you have babies through what do you call it? Surrogacy or IVF or any of those. They're saying that we can also correct any genetic defects through DNA and the kind of things that they do for manipulating or correcting the genes. IVF, yeah. So these kind of projects are already under. IVF normally doesn't do anything like that, but this is like an extra addition to IVF. All right. So along with IVF, that they're talking about manipulating the genetic defects so that your children will be what they call perfect. But or you can add a desirable uh, trait into your child, which I mean go from cosmetic features to others. You want a child with green eyes, can be done. All right, and so that kind of stuff. So all of this is where this is going. Right now, it's still in very small phases like this, but we think this is going to come to a place where it's going to become increasingly prevalent in society. So medical governance by co-governmental agencies. Government is getting behind this. And this will come in the form of healthcare eventually. Odd-shaped families, for the lack of a better name, we just called it this. But what we're basically saying is the family structure will break down. Already we've seen what the feminist movement and the LGBTQ movement has done to the family. It's going to remove any kind of legitimacy to family. They're going to say that it doesn't matter that you're a family. The government will take care of you, generally speaking, and children become the property of government. And you will be just someone who is facilitating this. So the odd-shaped family, already the foundation is being laid. There are laws that are being broken, laws that are aiding the process. So, for example, in the US now, because of LGBTQ movement, the question of bringing two Y chromosomes together and yet having a child, which we would normally unimaginable for anybody. But because if you have two men as partners and they're going to use a woman as a surrogate and they want both the men's characteristics to be in the baby. Now you see where this is going, right? And so what is happening is they're actually modifying laws to make this possible. So where are we going to go with this? Once you remove the validity of what a family will look like, then the day is not far when they will say, okay, any two people or anything and anything, and they can have children. And then when the responsibility of the children seem to be struggling in the society, because obviously if you don't have a proper family structure, the children are the first ones who are going to suffer. So therefore, what is going to happen is the state will jump in and say they belong to us. And that's what is going to happen. So that's still some distance away, but we are seeing at least the laws that are coming in place because of this. Mob morality is going to grow and become the most prevalent morality of society. Mob morality growing to become the most prevalent form of yeah. So we've already seen things like save the trees, kill the children, go forth, multiply and fill the earth is no longer an issue. We've come to a place where we are saying that we have overpopulated the earth, which is not true. And the idea is how can we reduce man's population to less than a billion, ideally 500 million. Today's world population, and by the way, last year, 2022, we crossed 8 billion. So we are now 8 billion people in this world. And the aim that these people have is how do you bring it down to just 500 million? And of course, there are suspicions of what has happened with COVID and many other things, which maybe to facilitate something like this. We're not sure. But the point is, there is a clear agenda that this should happen. And that agenda is increasingly being talked about. How do we reduce the population? They're saying that the earth can't take this. But I'll tell you what the real reason for this is. The real reason is because when the Antichrist comes on stage and if he has to manipulate the world, the larger the population, the more complicated it is for him. And so his agenda is that by the time he comes on stage, the population should be reduced. And I think in some way, God is also going to help him with that because we know that at least through the earthquake and the famine, quite a bit of damage is going to happen when the tribulation breaks out. Okay. Breakdown of spiritual authority structure. Human rights are changing in priority. Non-human rights are taking equal or higher precedence. Have you seen this? Yeah, where was that last year? There was a news article where they were talking about where I forget the exact news, but it was something related to the death of a pet, and they wanted to punish the owner criminally. They wanted to press criminal charges. Right? So we're coming to a place where non-human rights are taking equal or higher precedence than human rights. And where this will start to affect us is human value will go down. You will reduce human value to equivalence of an animal. That's basically what is going to go. All right. So devaluation of the human being is basically where we are heading. All right. And that's increasingly going to happen. And that's one of the things that you're going to see from a legal perspective. All right. So that's quickly a summary of some of the things that we said. More details, listen to the previous year message. And if you want it, Hanu sitting at the back will give you the link. See? Yeah. All right. The world we live in, what are the trends that we're seeing in the society around us? An increasingly immoral society. Belief in God across societies. The highest is in places like Philippines, Kenya, Nigeria, where it is at 95% of the people in that society believe there is a God. And in India, it's 79%, US, it's 44%, Canada, it's 26%. Most of Europe is around 20%. All right. And so, what are we saying? Increasing the Western world is becoming atheistic. They don't believe there is a God, while the Asian world is still kind of holding on to the idea that there is a God. Now, increasingly, our trend in society has been to ape the West. So, which means at some point, our own statistics will also go towards what the Western world is like, right? So, this is what is happening. Even in a society like US, which is a Christian nation, it's 44%. Canada, 26%. And all of this has direct impact. Rising acceptance of homosexuality. India, it's only 37%. Canada is 85%, which means if you were living in Canada and working in Canada, you would face the challenges involved in this on an everyday basis. Addressing people in terms of their whatever gender, what do you call it? Pronoun, and the kind of discrimination or whatever they will press. I mean, there have been multiple instances now from Canada where Christians have been persecuted in the name of this aspect, just the LGBTQ gender fluidity aspects. And what we have seen is this statistic, the rising acceptance of homosexuality, is correlated to the wealth of a nation. The richer they are, the more they accept the idea of homosexuality. So, where is India going to go on this curve? You can see now that the longer we are down the economic prosperity angle, eventually we'll come to a place where our statistics will also go towards like what Canada has. American religion is dying as a society, 44%, and it's less than majority and going down. One of the news items I saw recently was that this 44% of American society wants America to be declared a Christian nation. Yet, they don't want to remove LGBTQ from the laws. They don't want to change marriage laws. So there is this, what we call it, shell of a religion, right? What you're going to see is that increasingly this 44% is also not really committed Christian believers. They are just traditional Christians. And so this trend of going downwards is going to happen very fast for a country like US, right? So what are we seeing? Well, we're seeing an increasingly immoral society. It's no longer a problem to commit adultery as long as the other fellow doesn't kill you or something. But, adultery is not a crime. Telling lies, of course, was not a crime for a long time. But as we go further and further, we're finding that lesser and lesser of morality matters in society. And you may say, hey, how does this matter to me? Well, sooner or later, we're all connected. And the world that your children are going to grow in, well, this is what it is. There is increasing hostility to the truth all around us. And like I gave you the example of Canada and what they were doing to some of the Christian pastors there, they persecute them, and even for just preaching the gospel. That's it. For simple things. And this we are, of course, seeing in India also. And so what are we expecting? The more you speak the truth, more you will be persecuted, more we will also see martyrs. So people are going to lay down their lives for Christ. Is to be expected. We are increasingly becoming anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish. Anti-Semitic is anti-Jewish and anti-Christian in our attitude in society. And so Jews and Christians are the ones who face the maximum persecution. On the top of the list is the Christian. The one who truly practices his faith is the one who's targeted the most. And then there's this new phenomena, the apostate church. The apostate church is the church that is not true, that is a false church. And they're rising with philosophies like prosperity and well-being, another Jesus and another gospel. That's what that church is preaching, and they're rising. The apostate church is now coming to a place where it might very soon be at least 50% of the church and may become the majority. So the apostate church is rising, which means even if somebody wanted to find Christ, they might end up in one of these churches where Christ is not truly preached. And so it's going to become more difficult to come to know the truth, to come to know Christ, to come to know what is the real gospel. So the apostate church is rising. So this is what the world around you looks like. Now, what does this mean to us in India? So what are the trends in India? Okay, so here's where our population is going. And we are the only last country in the world that is left still rising in population. Or most of them are either stagnant. We haven't overtaken yet, but it's coming. You look disappointed. All right. So population projections, by the way, we are expected to overtake China next year. Next year, I think. Yeah. This year or next year is what I think it's supposed to be. Yeah. Population projections. So by 2050, total Indian population will be 1.7 billion people. 1.7 billion. Out of which the Muslims continue at the percentage that they are. We are expecting 18%. They are the only rising statistic in this. The Hindus are at 76% at 1.3 billion. Christians are still at 2.1%, which is 2.2% lesser than what they are now. And so that is about 37 million. And the others are at 2.7%, which is a rising statistic at 46 million. So this is what India will look like at the current trend that we have. And so 1.7 billion by 2050. And if you're wondering how is it changed, at the partition time in 1951, when we took our first census, India was 84.1% Hindus. In this statistic, as you can see, we're going to see them at 76%. So they have come down. Muslims were only 9.8%. In this statistic, they're 18%. That means they've doubled and beyond doubled. Christians were 2.3%, and this they're still 2.1%. So more or less stagnant. That's what it looks like. That's not good. All right. That's definitely not good for us. Okay. The trends in India in terms of praying patterns. what have we seen? The Muslim is praying lesser and lesser. He used to 97% was the statistic of praying Muslims. That has come down to 86% in 2021. Hindus were at 92%. They come down to 88%. Christians apparently are praying a little more. 91% has gone up to 93%. All right. The Sikhs are praying more. 92% has gone up to 96%. So out of this trend, what we can basically see is that the Hindu and the Muslim are praying lesser and lesser, while the Christian and the Sikhs are either similar or a little better, right? What does this mean? Well, what this should tell us is, if they're more fanatical and less praying, what do you have? You have what is called as a legalistic religion, or a tradition, or a shell of a religion. That's basically what you get. Because if you're not really practicing it, which is what praying will indicate, then what you really have is someone who's following the rituals, someone who's doing the practice, but not really involved in it. What does that mean to us? That tells you that you have an opportunity to minister to them, because they themselves are not really interested in their own religion. Right? That means you have an opportunity to minister to them, because they are only doing the outer part. Right? A discrimination from friends because of religion. And you can see the Muslim is top in the statistic. That's where we are as a society today. So if you look at it, 44% of the Muslims have responded saying that they do feel discrimination. 44%, which is huge. That means in any normal societal context, the Muslim is facing discrimination. All right. Interestingly, the Christians are not really saying much. Most Christians are saying 18% and 8% at Sikh. Basically means that they're not really facing much persecution. So the common Christian is not really facing much persecution. Of course, there are people who are doing something are facing persecution wherever they are. But generally speaking, what is this statistic is telling us is most Christians are not doing anything. They're not evangelizing, not doing any kind of mission work, not even opening their mouth to talk about Christ. That's what this statistic tells us. All right. And the Muslim is identified even by his uniform, as in his general demeanor is enough for him to be persecuted. Right? So his name, his clothes, his culture, all of those are enough for him to be persecuted. Well, guess what? When they finish with the Muslims, whom they will come for next? So sit quietly. One day you will have to open. If you think you can sit for long, beware. Perception of religious participation. So we can see here that they are sharing about how their own religious participation has changed. The Muslim says he has decreased by 2%. The Christian says the same, I'm not changed. I'm doing what I used to do always. Sikh also says the same thing, nothing has changed me. The Hindu is saying, I have become more religious. Okay. 20%, they have increased from 16 to 20%, 4% higher. So the Hindu is saying, I have become more religious. Right? So the Christians and Sikhs are still not affected in their proportions, and they're still remaining same in their religious mindset. Muslims are losing their faith, which means they are open to evangelism. And the Hindus are getting more fanatical and more close to evangelism. They are going after a resurgent identity, a hero worship, and a hope in some kind of a glorified picture in terms of their leadership today. Right? And so that's what is happening among the Hindus. Okay, here's a statistic done by MTV, one of the channels that young people watch. Mera Bharat Amaze Balls Survey. Okay, so here's what the trend among young people in India is. They surveyed 25,000 young people between the ages of 15 to 25 years old from 400 cities. Okay, now that's pretty interesting. I don't know whether they made a mistake in saying 400 or, but anyway, whatever it was, what is evident is that these are the trends that they have. They have this general idea that they want to make India great again. It's very Trump followers, I think. But anyway, 81% of millennials have taken part in some kind of local activities. There is a widespread view that women's safety need to be given more importance. This is the general trend of, and if you look at MTV's general audience, they are generally urban youth, right? So I think this would be what our urban youth are thinking. They have 81% of millennials are taking part in some kind of local activity, okay, clean up the beach or do some kind of activism or something like that. And they're participating in those things, right? We're not talking about talking about it, participating. They're actually participating. Okay, so there is a sense of participation in somehow saying that we want to make India better again. All right. And women's safety is one of the big issues, very high on their list of what they need to see happen. The second aspect, Bharat and India are the same, which is 64% of non-metro youth indicated that they would prefer to work in their own hometowns rather than move to any other city. So rural youth are saying, we don't want to go to the cities. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Not sure. Well, difficult to comment, but it depends on where you're going to apply it, right? So it probably may be good in certain contexts and bad in certain contexts, right? But that's what 64% of the youth are saying from rural areas. Girls on top, which is 94% women think that same rules should apply to both men and women in a relationship, which means we're talking about an egalitarian society where the roles of men and women are not wanting to be differentiated by the new generation. They want everybody to do the same kind of roles. Okay, so that means men and women don't have any differences. And this is one of the reasons probably that the marriages among millennials are not succeeding very much. I've not brought that statistic here, but when we see the marriages that are happening among the newest generation, they are very bumpy. Very, very bumpy, right? So the roles are being compromised and that's in their mindset already. 84% of the women say that their opinion is valued in a decision-making process within the family. Probably a good thing, which means girls are making their voice heard in the family, right? So it's not only the parents who are making the decision, but their children are making their voices heard, particularly the women. Right, girls. All right. Over half of the women, 53%, have urged parents to adopt a more modern outlook compared to 36% of the men. So the women are telling their parents to change their outlook. Is that good or bad? Again, we can't say. All right. It depends on what you're changing your outlook on, right? So, but what is noticeable is that they are pushing their outlook onto their parents. Now, if their outlook is bad, increasingly the result also will be bad. And so that's what is the statistic is telling us. So this can be good or bad. It all depends on where you are applying it. The fourth one is, thank God it's family. Young Indians are increasingly open to arranged marriages. This was a really shocking statistic for me. I couldn't have imagined this one. But young Indians are increasingly open to arranged marriages, joint families, and choosing family over career. I think this is generally a good thing, but I'm surprised. Okay, this is something that I couldn't have predicted at all. 60% of young Indians believe parents understand who's best for them when it comes to choosing a partner. 81% say they would be happy to stay with their parents or in-laws after marriage. I have no idea how this is possible, but apparently they have done the survey, they've got the details. I have to accept the survey for what it says. All right. This is something I just can't believe. Huh? Lockdown, huh? Okay. And the last one is the young people are saying, I am who I am. As in, there's an acceptance of gender definition among India's youth. 71% are offering support for homosexuality. So here is the millennial generation, and you saw the general statistic was at what, 37%, right? So our general statistic is only at 37%, which means it's the older folk who don't want homosexuality to be supported, while the millennials are saying 76% 71% are saying they support it. So now you see what I mean when I say that it's only a matter of time. When the millennials start becoming the families and the parents, and when they start becoming the next generation then you're going to see that all this is going to change. Beyond this openness to difference, 75% want to do something meaningful with their lives. And I found this was useful. 75% of millennials are saying they want to do something useful with their lives. 83% of them think pursuing their passion is more important than money. Okay. So what does this mean? Well, I think it has a context for evangelism at least. Where do you find meaning? Well, are we able to communicate that as a church? Because that may be the one thing that the young people may be able to understand. Because they're searching for meaning. Right? Okay, diaspora, Indian diaspora. Can you believe it? We are 32 million Indians living in the diaspora. Diaspora is people who live outside of India. Indians who are living outside of India. All right? 32 million. Okay, out of our total statistic, 32 million. And the majority of them are in United States, 13.9%. Okay, and the least is... Oh, okay, I didn't bring up the least. Sorry. The least are there in many places. I just brought some in terms of a trend. So you can see UAE is 10.7%, Malaysia is 9.3%, Saudi is 8.1%, Myanmar is 6.2%, UK is 5.9%, and Canada is 5.2%. So chasing the American dream from India. So that's what we are seeing in this statistic. But this statistic is a hopeful one. There is a good news with this one. Where does the Indian diaspora matter? Okay. You must understand that culturally, if you migrate to another country, there are three possibilities that will happen to you in the long term if you stay in that country. One is amalgamation. Amalgamation is you're merged into your next generation will kind of merge into that society in some way, whereby you would be indistinguishable in terms of culture. Common places for this would be Western societies like America, whatever is happening in Canada, US, and all those places, or even in places in the European countries. Because you are less in number, and because the next generation is easily integrated or amalgamated into that society, they will no longer be Indian from the second and third generation onwards. All right. There will be nothing about them that will be Indian. All right. They will be something else. Integration. Integration is whereby you still hold your culture without too much change. There might be some integration with the local culture, but you are still very much Indian culture is still a part of you. And I haven't brought up statistics for that here. Oh, there is. Okay, take a look at this Mauritius. Mauritius is a good example of it because their majority, the Indian diaspora is 65% of the population of the country. Indian diaspora is 65% of the population of Mauritius. So that means Indians are majority in that culture. That means what will happen is they will not lose their culture, they will retain their culture, and they will integrate with the general society there, right? That's what is going to happen. So Mauritius is an example of that. Seychelles is an example of that. That's about it in this list. All right. Distinct. Distinct is in a place like Middle East, you will find that all of the other cultures other than the local Arabs are distinct. Why? Because there is very little interaction between the cultures. So if you're a Filipino or an Indian in Middle East, You rarely get to see the lives of an Arab, nor does he see your life. You only meet at some common places like work or whatever else, common places. But you don't influence them, they don't influence you. That's called distinct. And because they don't give citizenship, it's very likely you will one day come back. All right. So there is a complete distinction that is maintained between the cultures. All right. So if you look at it now, you will understand most Middle Eastern countries are in the distinct group and in a very high percentage. UAE is 42.1% Indian. Can you believe what will happen if all of them came home? For whatever reason, their economy would collapse. All right. Qatar is 39.5%. Reunion is one of the islands that we're talking about. It's a French dominated island. I think French controlled island. 31.42%. Saudi Arabia is 23.22%. Kuwait is 22.5%. So this is the percentage of Indians in that society, in that population, right? So what happens is they have a, let's put it this way, a significant influence without having any kind of significant rights. Okay, they are influential without having the rights. Now compare that to Canada, 5.1%. All right. You don't have a voice in that society. And if they say that they want LGBTQ integrated, whether you like it or don't like it, it's against your culture, you don't have a choice. Nothing you can do about it. And compare that to US, 1.3%. Now you understand why we say that the next generation will get amalgamated. There will be nothing left. If you migrate to a country like US, the next generation will be American. Your next generations will not have any connection with India. Right? So this tells you certain things. One, in all diasporic contexts, they are open to the gospel. This is known from other information that we have. I have not brought it here. Any person who lives outside of their own country is usually open because they're strongly opened up by the cultural differences. All right. You're living in a different culture, you're living under different rules, there are different situations. So therefore you become open to everything that is in that culture. You're open. Therefore, in such context, we find that, for example, Muslims who are Indians who have gone to America will find that they are very open to the gospel. They would listen. They don't mind hearing it. They will come to a Christian meeting. They will participate in any invitations you give, etc., etc., etc. So what am I saying? The diasporic context is very highly evangelistic. But in contexts where they are distinct, they also become useful in other ways, which means they are not integrating with any other culture there. They will be very open to another Indian whom they see somewhere. So across the Middle East, you will find Indians are happy to talk to other Indians. In fact, we found that Indians are happy with Pakistanis, Afghanis, anybody who is in their general vicinity. They're very happy because they relate to them. They don't relate to the Arab. They don't relate to people who are far away from their culture, right? And so this is generally a good thing because they're very open to the gospel there. They're open in every way to the gospel there. So this is some of the things that we see here. All right. So I hope you understand what I'm saying here. Where does the Indian diaspora matter to us? And then, of course, we can ask certain additional questions, like, for example, Christians in the Middle East. And then what does that mean? Okay. And so there are good contexts for us to talk about evangelism and how the diaspora can make a big difference. By the way, the opposite is also true. We have people who have come to India from some of these countries. Like, for example, according to our statistic, there are about 3 lakh international students who are studying in India, out of which almost 50,000 are in Bangalore, out of which 50% are African students. They're coming from the North African countries mostly, which are Muslim, which means they are here and open to the gospel right here in our backyard. 25% of them are from Middle East, approximately. So here is countries where you can't send a missionary, whose students are right here in your backyard. Okay. What does that tell you if you want to do evangelism? Very, very strategic impact. If you impact them, they will go back with the gospel. And what will that do? All right. Okay. Coming back, 7 facts about Hindus around the world. Not getting into all the details, but here is one of the things we noticed from the statistic. Indians are of many religions celebrate Diwali. Look at the statistic of Diwali. Hindus, 95%, Muslims, 20%, understandable. Christians, 31% of Christians celebrate Diwali. 31%. And then Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains. So you can see 90, 79, 98, which means if you really want to minister using their culture and festival, the one that you should target is Diwali. Here is the one that will help you to reach them. And what is Diwali about? The festival of lights. You think we can't make an evangelistic message out of that? You see why the statistics help you? Because if you really understood this, you would create evangelistic materials that will enable people to use Diwali as a mode of evangelism. Okay, the other statistic, okay, Eid, of course, understandable, Muslims are the maximum, the others are not even involved in that statistic. Look at Christmas. 97% of Christians celebrate Christmas, fine, that is understandable. But 17% of Hindus celebrate Christmas. Why? I have no idea. Why are 17% of Hindus celebrating Christmas? Not sure. But what does it tell us? If there's one festival you really want to target, it is Christmas. And 19% of Sikhs celebrate Christmas. So Christmas is a very useful festival for you to use for evangelism. 18% of Jains, 13% of Buddhists. It's becoming a no-brainer to understand where you need to be putting your effort at. All right. Okay. So we can see this. Okay. 8 in 10, that is 98%, say that they believe in God. Okay, no, sorry. 8 in 10 of Hindus say that they believe in God with absolute certainty. 80% believe in a God with absolute certainty. So even though Hinduism is sometimes referred to as a polytheistic religion, very few Hindus take the position. Only 7% of Hindus take the position that there are actually multiple gods. Okay. And the prevailing view held by more than 61% is that there is one God with many manifestations. And 3 in 10 Hindus say that there is only one God. Okay. The vast majority of Hindus selected more than one God or indicated that they have many personal gods. The highest statistic is given to Shiva. 44% are identified with Shiva as their God. All right. So their personal deity is mostly associated with Shiva. 44%, Ganesha, 32%, Lakshmi, 28%, and then 17% is where Ram comes. Okay. So there is that huge difference if you really want to understand that. All right. So that means you must really, most of the time, you must have a good understanding of a Shaivite perspective to understand how to minister the gospel. Reincarnation is mainstream teaching, but fewer than half of them believe in it. Less than half of Hindus believe in reincarnation. College educated Hindus are slightly less likely than others also to believe it. They come down to 34%. Only 34% of college educated Hindus believe in reincarnation. Nearly 2/3 of Indian Hindus, that is 64%, say it is important to be Hindu to be Indian. 64%. So this is not a BJP thing. It is cultural. Hindus do think that you have to be Hindu to be Indian. That being Indian means being Hindu. 64%. And the majority of Hindus, 59%, say that speaking Hindi is crucial to being Indian. I wish they knew who made Hindi, but anyway. Roughly half of the Hindus say they voted for the 2019 election, say that they voted for BJP. 49% voted for BJP. Right? So, if you're looking at the statistic of being Hindu and speaking Hindi are very important to be Indian, 60% of the Hindus say this. Right? So, what does that mean? Well, if you speak Hindi, you've conquered half of their trust. If you speak Hindi well, you conquered half of their trust. The other half may be a little more difficult, but at least half of the way. So, if you're ministering to India, here's what you're saying. Population growth is telling us that the church is behind in doing its job. That's sad, right? Society is polarized and religiously fanatic, and the youth are confused and idealistic. Muslims seem to be openly persecuted, others are quiet, mostly about this. Hindus are growing religious, yet also feeling the increasing tension and stress of society. And praying has become more personal. I didn't bring that statistic, but we found that Hindus go less and less to the temples to pray, but they are praying more and more in their homes. So that means somehow it has become a more personal thing at home that is happening for them. Okay, Diwali is the most celebrated by most Hindus, and 17% of them also celebrate Christmas. The Indian diaspora is a good opportunity to equip and evangelize. All right. So this is what our summary of what the trends in India is telling us. Economically, where are we going? Not good news for you guys. The Indian economy, we said last year that it would be mostly flat, and we did exactly that. We were flat through 2022. Well, inflation is still hurting us quite badly. So, and the US economy is doing slightly better in physical fundamentals than India. So, FIIs, that is foreign investors, will be slow. So, we are expecting a flatlined economy in 2023 also. And worst case, the second half of 2023 will be southward. It will go down, right? And so this is what we're expecting. What will make a difference to this? Well, some factors that we would advise to watch would be if there are any soaps during the budget 2023, especially in IT slabs and real estate tax breaks. If they give anything related to buying real estate, better tax breaks for that, then the real estate market will be one of the big ones that will make a difference to recovery. Further inflation correction through rates, because we expect this to be a bad scene for quite some time. So we expect that the RBI will continue to increase the rate of interest. Hiring and recruitment will generally stagnate. And that is not surprising because you already had one bad year, 2022. Now you're carrying into 2023 with the same bad. So it's going to be generally stagnating. And real estate is the market that is going to be either going to go through huge stress and go south, or like we said, if any changes in the budget bring some relief, then that may be the only good news there. So if you own real estate and you want to sell it now. And if you want to buy it later in the year. Okay. So that's what we would advise. So what is the overall picture in India looking like? Economic story is flat, religious and political narrative is still polarized. Long-term story for India is highly volatile and changing social structures, especially in the north and also affecting the south. History shows that the longer and more polarized society gets, increasing chances of a civil war taking place in that nation, especially when religion, class, or economics is involved. And we have all three. We have religion, class, and economics involved right now, which are not looking good, right? Can we build a better evangelical narrative that suits the Indian psyche? Well, like I said, Shaivite thinking is predominant among Hindus. So would you consider how you would present the gospel to someone in that context? Christmas festival as opportunity is evident. Diwali as an opportunity, not so evident. Can we do something to present the gospel in that context in a way that they can understand? Evangelistic fields that are ripe, the diasporic connect as an evangelistic strategy. Well, that's something that we have to think about, because the diaspora seems to be serving two good purposes. One, like I said, Indians are open to the gospel when they are abroad. And that is one context, to share the gospel among Indians in the diaspora. And two, the Middle East strategy as a long-term sending strategy. There are Christian communities in the Middle East that are ripe for enabling or equipping so that they can be a sending agency. And that's another thing that we should consider, because especially places like Middle East, that's a pretty large group. Are you praying for this nation? Are you prepared to face all of this? Because this is what is coming. And now that we've been saying this for 3 years, we're even more confident about what it means, that it's coming. Okay, let's move on. From a prophetic context, what does all this mean? Well, the one thing that has come true from all that we said is the war has started between Russia and Ukraine. Now, what we said last year was the Magog war, and we are expecting pre-tribulation wars are anticipated around the corner that involves Israel, Iran, Russia, and others. And there would be a miraculous intervention of God to protect Israel. The stage is getting set. Last year, when we said this, there was no war between Russia and anybody. This year, we can see now, for the last 10 months now, the Russia-Ukraine war has been on. It is setting context. Russia is not able to sell its oil or gas to European countries anymore because they want to wean themselves off it. And you can see what is really happening in the news. So increasingly, this is creating a very bad position for them. And what is going to happen is Israel has been substituting and providing, saying that they provide the gas to the European countries. So now you can understand how Israel is becoming a target by Russia. So far, they've had cordial relationships, Russia and Israel, but the stage is changing. And what is this going to look like in 5 years from now? That's what you should ask. Because 5 years from now, if Russia is going to struggle because they're not able to sell their oil and gas, and Israel is prospering because they're selling their gas to the European countries, what will Russia do to Israel? So that's one. Two, more and more of the pre-flood society of Noah that we expect around us is happening. And we can see that. All right. And so Matthew 24, 37 to 39, Jesus actually says, for as in the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. And for as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day when Noah entered the ark, and they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of man, Son of Man. All right. And so we find that here is what is going to happen, that the things that happened during Noah's time is going to happen again. Are we seeing it? Yes. The Nephilim problem, the issues with DNA manipulation, the problems that are related to morality, immorality, homosexuality, all of these problems, all of them are right here. Okay. Here's what Jesus says in Luke 18. I tell you, he will give justice to them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? Are we increasingly losing faith? Yes. By the way, there are 32,000 atheists in India. 32,000. Small number as far as the larger population is concerned, but that number was zero a few years back. Okay. You're coming to a place where there will be no faith, and society is getting there. So what is the prophetic context? Well, when we are busy with our own lives and oblivious to the prophetic truth and rejecting the Lord and his gospel of salvation, that's what no faith looks like, right? And that's what this society around us is heading for. And so when Christ comes again, will he find faith? The preparation of the Antichrist platform, the one world everything, is being prepared. One currency, one religion, one leader. That's what we are heading for. And that stage is getting prepared. The rising acceptance of homosexuality and the failure of morality, the experimentation with DNA and genetics, the familiarity of the occultic through mainstream movies and serials, the tampering of the biblical family design, all of these things are happening. The tapering of the godly generation in the church as the rapture approaches. Well, we're still some distance away for this, but what you're going to find is, those who have been with us in the Genesis study will understand that when we saw the flood coming, there was a tapering of the godly generation. The godly generation were removed before the flood came. And that's going to happen again before the rapture comes. So you're going to find that most of the godly men and women are going to be taken beforehand. And then there is only one sudden rapture that has to take place for the remaining. And that's what is going to happen. Right? Okay. Okay, I'm not getting into this, but if those of us who are interested in the prophetic end time events, you can join us for the Revelation study that is going to start very soon in a few weeks from, that's the Thursday morning study and the Friday evening study, Understanding Prophecy. Both of this are dealing with this. So if those who are interested, please join those studies and we'll talk more there. But what we're talking about is the end time events and prophecies that are coming up. So here is a verse that is talking about false prophets that will arise. Matthew 24, 7 to 14. Lawlessness will increase. Love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. All right. And it talks about that. All right. So what are we saying? The church is nearing its redemption and Israel is nearing its tribulation. And so this is what is coming. The church is nearing its rapture and Israel is going to enter into that 7-year period of tribulation. We're still some distance from it, but that's exactly where we're heading. The evident natural calamities, signs in the heavens, all are increasing in frequency of events as what was told in Matthew 24 and also in the other gospels, that the same thing was said, that there will be increasingly lesser gap between them, more frequency between them. And that's exactly what we're seeing, right? We see more and more of earthquakes, more and more of the calamities, the pandemics and everything else that are happening. And that's what is happening around us. Okay. Yeah, okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, okay. So what am I saying? Church, if you were to look at from a church perspective, what are we looking at? Well, we know what our mission is. I'm not jumping into all the details here, but we know from the beginning, from the fall of man, from the original mandate in Genesis 1, to Israel as a nation, to the failure of Israel, to the church and the apostles, and to the ultimate end in the millennium, when Christ will come and reign on earth for 1,000 years. This is what we are heading for. Why does the church exist? Well, the church exists for fulfilling the Great Commission. That's its mandate. And that's our part today. But there is going to come another age, the millennium age, where 1,000 years Christ will reign. No evangelism will take place. What is going to happen is all things are going to be made new. The earth is going to be restored. Environment is going to get restored. Man is going to get restored. Everything is going to be brought back to how it was originally. And that's what is going to happen in the millennium reign. And then after all that comes the final judgment, when all things will be judged and hell and heaven will become real. And only those whose names are in the book of life will continue beyond that. Okay, so this is where it's leading to the new heaven, the new earth. So this is what is coming. This is the big picture of what the Bible is telling us, right? And since you've heard it many times, I'm not getting into all the details. But we talked about the rising apostate church. What is that? Well, here is what the Bible has told us. Deception of unbelievers is increasing and rampant, and full-fledged delusion is anticipated. When is the full-fledged delusion going to take place? After the rapture. What is delusion? Where people will make it look like they are God. They are able to do some kind of fake miracles and all kinds of things that they are able to do and convince people about they being gods, they being able to do something and lead people astray. That's what is coming. And this is generally, we are talking about unbelievers, everybody on earth. All right. And that's going to come after the rapture. But within the church, believers will be falling away from faith. They will be led by deceitful spirits and doctrines. So if you want to understand these things, you as a believer should be discerning. If you are not, you might also fall for this. Seemingly godly men hold on to a form of godliness having denied its power. People who say they're godly men and women, they're only pretending. And they are not really so. Avoid them. Believers want teachers who will speak according to their own desires and turn aside to myths. Beware of your own desires, because you will remove people who teach what is right and put in their place people who tell you what you like. And that is also what Paul told us. Savage wolves will come, and it was a warning given to the elders. Uphold the right leaders because they are gifted in recognizing these wolves. And if you remove the right leaders, you will not know when the savage wolves will rise in and destroy you. So these are some of the things that were told to us from the scriptures about the rising apostate church. Paul told all of them, I think, from Paul. And if you look at it, you will see that this is exactly what is happening around us. The apostate church is rising because people are doing exactly these things. Large-scale events. Well, the ecumenical movement will get stronger. When unity was needed, it was not to be found. But now a strange large-scale alignment towards the false gospel will take place. Change of pope anticipated. We do expect that the final pope will play a role as the false prophet. We don't know whether it's this pope or the one that's coming after him. So we do expect that there is going to be one, that there is a change of the pope that will happen. Real signs and wonders, but by false prophets and leaders, have started. And this is something that you will begin to see around you. True elders will be hunted down even to death. For without striking the shepherd, it is difficult to deceive the sheep. So, this is what is going to come. Friends in the mission field. Someone can read this. Matthew chapter 16, 18 to 19.
Father, I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you move on earth shall be moved in heaven.
Okay. So, here's the good news, that up till the end, the church will prevail. The gates of hell will not prevail against it. So, the church will win this battle. There is no doubt. Jesus himself told us. And therefore, you can be confident of one thing: if you're doing the will of God, you still have a job to do today. Right? The harvest is all around us, and the gospel and the stories of it all around us in countries like Bangladesh, China, Indonesia. The stories of the gospel within this country happening in UP, Punjab, and various other places. So a lot of things are happening, but the opportunities are right around us in the cities we live in, and that too in plenty. The question is, what are we doing? There are so many new tools and methods to enable you, from business as mission, family ministries, children's ministries, apologetics. There are various things that are available today that weren't available earlier. And that means if you really want to equip yourself to serve God in some way, wherever it is, your workplace or neighborhood or whatever, there are so many new ways of doing things. You only have to spend time to hear from God and be innovative in your approach. That's it. What would I say at a personal level? Well, are you growing in the Word of God? Knowing, studying, obeying, sharing, teaching, and promoting? Are you discerning things around you based on the Word of God? Do you have some basic apologetic skills so that when somebody asks you two questions, you know how to reply? Increasing involvement in ministry. There are today new ways of doing ministry while serving, as in while working. There are innovative choices of work that you can choose, like business or tent making or other ideas that you can use, whereby you'll be able to do your job and yet at the same time find avenues to serve God in terms of the gospel. Particularly in the north, there have been multiple times people have asked, would people be willing to relocate to some of these cities in the north? Because just your presence there would open up avenues for you to share the gospel. In the work that you do there or in the whatever, there are so many things that can be done. Just relocating to somewhere in the north will make a difference. Innovative work choices, flexibility in availability, strategic with involvement. All of these are options that are available to the believer today. You need to change your perspective on how to serve the Lord. There are many options available. Keeping our hearts and minds steadfast. This is one of the biggest problems. Believers are, like the statistic told us, they are so afraid of sharing the gospel that they don't even open their mouth. But you need to have the courage that nobody can touch us till the Lord allows. And if the Lord allows, then what can you do? It's time. All right. So be wise, but not afraid. Fearless. Don't worry about the pandemic, tsunami, earthquake, whatever else. People are so afraid nowadays of everything. And in the process, you're wasting your life. Let's stick to focus to the job that God has given us, the calling that He has placed over us. Are our hearts and minds committed, single-minded in our devotion to Christ? Are we waking up and asking the question, what can I do for Him today? As a church, we've been saying this again and again, year after year. Small hammer, big bang. That's what we are, right? We are not a big group. We are a very small community of people as ICC. But as a small hammer, how do we make the maximum impact? Big bang. So, some of the things that we've been saying here are network with all everywhere, equip those who are interested with the word, mentor the committed, and plan churches strategically. This is what our overall strategy is going to look like. Okay? Network with all, equip the interested, mentor the committed, and plan churches strategically. So, with that in mind, you all need to ask the question, how can I find new access methods to network? New museums. We ran one. How do we do better ones? Equip the interested. We're doing Bible studies and camps. How can we continue to equip more people in this process? Mentor the committed, whether that is at an individual or a family level or leadership or ministerial level. We will offer mentoring at all these three aspects, right? So there will be mentoring programs that will run as we discuss next week. We'll talk more about them and that will highlight these details. Plan strategically. We want to see at least 5 new church plants in the next 5 years. And so we want to see new places where we're planting churches and we want to see how they grow and serve the kingdom. So what will you do in the new year? Who are this? Where do you go? Well, purify your motives of knowing Christ. Very often you're divided, double-minded. Christ alone should matter. Then your life will change. Stop chasing what Christ can do, his favor, his blessing, that, this. But see Christ the person, your Savior, your God. Is he your deepest longing? Examine your prayers, your longings, your ambitions, and make him the only ambition of your life. Sacrifice everything else at the altar and see how he will change you and accomplish much with you in the year ahead. So I leave this with you. Consider, keep thinking, keep discussing, and I hope that all of you will step up to participate in what we can do as a church in the year ahead. Let's prepare our hearts and minds to come to the table, and we will quieten ourselves, consider what God is speaking to us, and in that process, let's ask how we can obey him fully and not be half-hearted in our commitment to him.